I mean, we've all got a story we like to tell, myself included, so here goes.
I mean, we've all got stories we'd like to tell, including myself. So here we go.
I mean, we've all got a story we like to tell, myself included, so here goes. As a kid, I sang in a pretty decent choir.
As a kid, I sang in a pretty decent choir.
Myself included, so here goes. As a kid, I sang in a pretty decent choir.
What is this? We go around the world performing for popes and presidents.
But upon turning teenager, I decided I was going to trade that in for a chance of being cool.
But upon teenagers,
But upon turning teenager,
upon turning teenagers,
decided I was going to trade that in for a chance.
I decided I was gonna trade that in for a chance
Of being cool.
being cool.
So for me, this meant cigarettes, skateboard,
So for me, that meant cigarettes,
boards, petty crime.
petty crime.
I'm sure you can fill in the rest.
I'm sure you can fill in the rest. You can fill in the rest. Fill in the rest.
I failed miserably at this particular brand of cool and then proceeded to become Target 1A for bullies for quite some time until finally I found a path to relevance by stumbling into a role. I failed boards, petty crime. I'm sure you can fill in the rest. I failed miserably at this
I failed miserably
particular brand of cool
at this particular brand of coal
and then proceeded to become Target 1A for bullies for quite some
Target 1A for bullies for quite
time
some
until
time until finally
I found a path to relevance by
found a path to relevance,
stumbling into a role with nearly universal high school
importance,
selling drugs.
selling drugs.
Target 1A for I failed miserably at this particular brand of cool and then proceeded to become Target 1A for bullies for quite some time until finally I found a path to relevance by
Found a path to relevance. Wow.
stumbling into a role with nearly universal
Stumbling into a role with nearly
high school importance. Selling drugs. As I crossed into adulthood, that decision and those that came with it nearly cost me everything in my life, everything I had worked for. Selling drugs. As I crossed into adulthood, that decision and those that came with it that nearly cost me everything in my life, everything I had worked for.
It cost me everything in my life, everything I'd worked for.
But as it happened, I was given a second chance by a woman I haven't seen in 14 years, but who is out there in the audience today. Everything in my life, everything I had worked for. But as it happened, I was given a second
chance
by a woman I haven't seen in 14 years.
by a woman who I haven't seen 14 years.
but who is out there in the audience today.
But who is out there in the audience today?
Justice Maven Wong.
Justice Maven Wong?
Thank you. This is where my story begins.
This is where my story begins.
I'm sure, no doubt, you tell yours just as well.
I'm sure, no doubt, you tell yours just as well. You tell yours just as well.
We are unbelievably skilled, rather, at telling our own story.
We're unbelievably skilled, rather, at telling your own story.
The progression, the adversity, always managing to convey this sense of triumph in the present moment, and often there's a hopefulness, unbelievably skilled, rather, at telling our own story. The progression,
the adversity,
always managing to convey this sense of triumph in the present moment, and often there's a hopefulness, sometimes even a confidence in what the future has in store for us.
In what the future has in store for us, in what the future has in store for us.
We're like these master storytellers, and
we are like these master storytellers.
We're our favorite story.
And we're our favorite story.
But our stories are going to kill us. Already I can tell you they limit us. They hold us down and constrain us. Sometimes they even suffocate us.
Sometimes they can even suffocate us.
To their credit, though, at least they're consistent. They all follow the same narrative. To their credit, though, at least they're consistent.
To their credit, though, at least they're consistent.
They all follow the same narrative pattern, what we've come to call the hero's journey. What we've come to call the hero's journey. It's just that the hero's journey we see played out on the big screen teaches us that change happens inside the hero while the world around them stays constant. Everyone effectively waits for the hero to be reborn. We see play pattern, what we've come to their credit, though, at least they're consistent. They all follow the same narrative pattern, what we've come to call the hero's journey. It's just that the hero's journey we see played out on the big screen.
It's just the hero's journey we see played on the big screen. Teaches
us that change happens inside the hero.
Teaches us
just that the hero's journey we see played out on the big screen teaches us that change
teaches what? Us that change happens
inside the hero. While the world around them stays constant. Everyone effectively waits for the hero to be reborn.
Everyone effectively waits for the hero to be reborn.
And every time I see this, I can't help but think to myself, how beautiful would it be if the world worked that way?
Every time I see this, I think to myself, how beautiful the world would be if it happens that way.
Help but think to myself, waits for the hero to be reborn. And every time I see this, I can't help but think to myself. How beautiful would it be if the world worked?
How beautiful would it be? How beautiful would it be
that way?
If the world worked that way? How beautiful would it be? I can't help to think to myself.
If it waited for us to come around on our own time to fully embrace our new selves, and then step back into the picture with both feet firmly planted on the ground. Myself, how beautiful would it be if the world worked that way? If it waited for us to come around on our own time to fully... the world worked that way. If it waited for us to come around...
If it waited for us to come around
on our own time...
on our own time
to fully embrace our new selves...
to fully embrace our new selves
and then step back into the picture with...
and then step back into the picture
both feet firmly
with both feet
planted on the ground.
both feet firmly planted on the ground.
If it waited for us to come around on our own time to fully embrace our new selves, if it waited for us to come around on our own time to fully embrace our new selves, and then step back into the picture with both feet firmly planted on the ground, wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice?
It's not at all how it happens.
It's not at all how it happens.
Instead, while we're out legalizing same-sex marriage in one moment, the very idea of a binary gender system or a two-spouse limit is being challenged in the next.
A is legalized, but at the same time, B is challenged at the same time.
Instead, while we're out legalizing same-sex
Instead, while we're legalizing same-sex marriage,
in one moment,
in one moment,
the very idea of a binary gender system
the very idea of a binary gender system
or a two-spouse limit
or two spouse limit
is being challenged in the next.
is being challenged in the next.
I can assure you what we call gay marriage today is going to seem like a traditional idea to us a couple of years from now. Binary gender system or a two-spouse limit is being challenged in the next. I can assure you what we call gay marriage
I can assure you, what we call gay marriage
today is going to seem like a traditional
today is gonna seem like a
idea
traditional,
to us a couple of years from now.
Idea to us a couple of years from now.
That's the world we live in.
That's the world we live in.
We don't get to experience change as this beautiful arc that moves at a pace we're comfortable with. We don't get to experience change as
We don't get to expect the changes
this beautiful arc that
as this beautiful art
moves at a pace we're comfortable with.
that moves at a pace we're comfortable with. That moves at a pace we're comfortable with.
Change comes quickly,
Change comes quickly,
without pause.
without pause.
And yet studies show that our willingness to change goes down as we age. It's built right into our expectations of people at different stages of life. And yet studies show that our willingness to change goes
Yet studies show that our willingness to change
down as we age. It's built right into
goes down as we age.
our expectations of people at different stages of life.
It's built down into
Change goes down as we age. It's built right into our expectations of people at different stages of life. Change goes down as we age. It's built right into our
It's built right into our expectations.
expectations of people at different stages of life.
What?
We expect our friends to understand concepts like white privilege,
We expect our friends to understand concepts like white privilege,
but are satisfied if our parents can simply avoid stereotypes.
but are satisfied if our parents can simply avoid stereotypes.
To our expectations of people at different stages of life. We expect our friends to understand concepts like white privilege, but are satisfied if our parents can simply avoid stereotypes. And our grandparents, we hope for the best.
And our grandparents, we hope for the best.
But sometimes we resign ourselves to the fact old dogs knew tricks. But sometimes we resign ourselves
something that you do not like because you cannot change it. Resign self to live on. Resign self.
To the fact old dogs knew tricks.
Sometimes we resign ourselves to the old facts. To the fact all dogs knew tricks. All dogs knew tricks. You can teach an old dog new tricks. People who have long been used to doing things in particular. All dogs knew tricks. It's never too late. Resign ourselves.
Stereotypes. And our grandparents, I mean, we hope for the best. But sometimes we resign ourselves to the fact old dogs knew tricks.
Sometimes we resign ourselves to the fact. Resign ourselves to the fact. All dogs need trick. All dogs. You can teach an all dog new tricks. Resign ourselves. Resign ourselves.
It's just that that's a card we're not going to get to play for much longer.
It's just like the card that we're not gonna play for much longer. And that's a card that we're not gonna get to play for much longer.
You see, unlike my dear grandmother who's managed to get through life without ever pumping her own gas or using a cell phone, my soon-to-be 14-year-old goddaughter will grow up with an incredible amount of technological change happening everywhere around her. Through life without much longer. You see, unlike my dear grandmother,
dear grandmother,
who's managed to get through life without ever pumping her own gas
or
using a cell phone, my soon-to-be 14-year-old goddaughter
my soon-to-be 14-year goddaughter
will grow up with an incredible amount of technological change happening
will grow up with the incredible amount of technological change
everywhere around her. And unlike our willingness to change, which decreases linearly, technology's rate of change is exponential. Willingness to change, technological change happening everywhere around her. And unlike our willingness to change, which
decreases linearly,
technology's rate of change is exponential.
Technology's rate of change is exponential.
In fact, the law of accelerating returns, that which governs technology's rate of change, is quick to point out that the amount of progress we saw in the whole of the 20th century was effectively repeated during the first 14 years of Jessica's life. Sure. In fact, the law of accelerating returns, that which governs technology's rate of change, is quick to point out that the amount of progress we saw in the whole of the 20th
century. The amount of change we saw in the whole of the 21st century
was effectively repeated during the first 14 years of Jessica's life.
During the first 14 years of Jessica's life.
And what just took us 14 years will take only 7 more from today. And what just took us 14 years will take only 7 more from today.
We'll take only 7 more from today.
Life. And what just took us 14 years will take only 7 more from today. By 2040, when Jessica's 38 years old and beginning to consider children of her own, a 20th century worth of progress will be happening multiple times per year. By 2040,
by 2040 when
Jessica's
Jessica's
38 years old
30 years old
and beginning to consider children of her own,
and beginning to consider children of our own,
a 20th century worth of progress will be
a 20th century worth of progress,
happening multiple times per year.
will be happening multiple times per year.
Think about that. What wisdom can we possibly impart to a young person about living in a world we can't even fathom?
What wisdom we can possibly give to young people in a world we can't possibly even fathom?
What wisdom can we possibly impart to
What wisdom we can possibly impart? What wisdom what wisdom can we possibly impart
a young person about living in a world we can't
to a young person living in a world
even fathom?
we can't even fathom?
That's the nature of an exponential curve. It takes a long time to reveal itself, but when it does, almost nothing stays the same. We can't even fathom. That's the nature of an exponential curve.
That's the nature of exponential curve.
It takes a long time to reveal itself, but when
It takes a long time to reveal itself.
it does, almost nothing stays the same.
But when it does, nothing stays the same.
And though we prefer to talk about drones and self-driving cars, historians tell us that it's actually technology's ability to deliver us new ideas, which in turn change our behavior, which we most often underestimate and fail to predict. And though we prefer to talk about drones and artificial drones and self-driving
cars,
historians tell us that it's actually technology's ability to
historians tell us it's actually technology's ability
deliver us new ideas, which in turn change
to deliver us new ideas, which in turn
our behavior, which we most often underestimate.
Which change our behaviors, which we most often underestimate
And fail to predict. We're not only slow to predict them, we're slow to adapt.
We are not only slow to predict them, we're slow to adapt.
Because our stories weigh a ton.
Because our stories what? Weigh a ton. Weigh a ton.
We're not only slow to predict them, we're slow to adapt. Because our stories weigh a ton.
Weigh a ton.
Let me give you an example. How many of us recall being nudged in the direction of a good career when we were young? Safe bets, like law or medicine or accounting. These were the careers to aspire to, we were told. How many of us recall being nudged in the...
How many of us recall being nudged?
Let me give you an example. How many of us recall being nudged in the...
Nudge. Giggling and nudging each other. Nudge the cat off the sofa. Nudge the cat. Nudge. Must be nudging for you now. Let's jump to that first. Clever nudges us first portion. You find yourself a person nudging you in the direction of study. Nudging you.
Let me give you an example. How many of us recall being nudged in the direction of a good career when we were young?
How many of us recall being nudged in the direction of a good career when we were young?
Safe bets, like law or medicine or
Safe bets like
accounting.
Safe bets. Say best.
These were the careers to aspire to, we were told.
These are the careers we aspire to, we are told.
They're also among the ones at the top of the chopping block when it comes to automation. They're also among the ones at the top of
They are also among the ones at
the chopping block when it,
at the top of the chopping block. At the top of the chopping block. On the chopping block is in danger of losing their job, getting into serious problems. Said this on the chopping block is likely to be terminated. Matt really put his head on the chopping block when he started spending all the money that doesn't belong to him. Chopping block. Planned about to be discarded thrown away. The president-elect has made it clear that several of his predators' policy will be on the chopping block, as he takes office. He told me that my project is on the chopping block, on the chopping because of how many delays there have been. In danger of losing them. 100 people will be on the chopping block. This is on the chopping block. But those are the ones that at the top of the chopping block.
when it comes to automation.
When it comes to automation,
Turns out machines don't need 8 years of school to memorize facts and patterns.
it turns out that machines don't need years of school to memorize facts and patterns.
But are we seriously going to start teaching today's middle schoolers that they may want to avoid these at-risk jobs? Start teaching today's years of school to memorize facts and patterns. But are we seriously going to start teaching
But are we seriously gonna start teaching
today's middle schoolers that they may want to avoid
today's middle schoolers that they may want to
these
avoid
at-risk jobs?
these at-risk jobs?
Or are we wrapped in the warmth of a story that we've been writing for decades? Or are we wrapped in the warmth of a
Or wrapped in the warmth of a story,
story that we've been writing for decades?
that we've been writing for decades. Okay, we're wrapped in the story that we've been writing for decades.
The degrees always mean better jobs.
The degrees always mean better jobs.
Better jobs lead to better pay,
Better jobs means better
pay
pay.
to better possessions, and better possessions afford us greater security.
Better positions afford us a sense of security. Better positions afford us greater security.
But how much security can there be
How much security can there be
if we're already spending 2/3 of our income on a single-family home?
if we are already spending 2/3 of our income on a single-family home?
Because that's our version of a storybook ending.
Because that's our version of a storybook ending.
The truth is that the further we are into a story,
Oh.